So, welcome to Storytime number 74, our April story for 2024. Our little show and tell bits today were things in threes, based on the topic that's included of variations on threes a crowd, such as maybe threes a party or threes a scheme. My thing is three is chaos. We've just got a new, very young rabbit who is going to be friends with our pair of sisters, but he's not yet, and we have to wait because he's only 5 months old and he hasn't been to sex very long, so they're not allowed to go to the expert who will make them be friends for another month-ish. So at the moment there's a fence up the middle of our living room, and there are like 4 extra litter trays because he's only little and he's just learning to use one, and it's pretty chaotic in here. So 3 is chaos. Hopefully 3 will be good company in the future.
Each has come and joined us, so we're now a 3. So 3 is company and cuddles.
No, I think 3's a family as well. You could have 3's a family.
That's true. 3 is a family, yeah.
Yeah, 2's a couple, 3's a family.
Oh, Alison's just happens to have 3 umbrellas in the lovely little artwork.
Oh! Cute.
3 is protection, maybe. From the
I know, extra bit, yeah. It's about asymmetry. I love asymmetry.
Yes, yeah. 3's a thorough.
Yeah.
So the other little show and tell one was souvenir tea towels. We actually saw lots last time, but there's one in the background with tea. That's great.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yes, Alison's got one. What's this one?
Okay. This is, I am unashamedly, totally committed to my old college. And every time I go there, they have a new tea towel.
Oh.
So this is their latest tea towel. So I'm always washing up with a little bit of my own history.
Oh,
nice. So this is part of, they've just opened what they call the Camellia House.
Yeah.
And so featured on here is the Camellia House, which is this part of the building here. And it used to be an old stately home. It became a PE college. It then was part of the local community. And now it's been taken on by the National Trust as a place for people to go and visit. So guess what I do once a year? I go and visit.
Yeah.
And get a new tea towel.
That's great. That's a very good kind of souvenir tea towel, a much more personally relevant one than just I went there once and I got the tea towel. I went there once.
One that I showed you last time, but I didn't buy them. Somebody gave them to me because her mum went there once to lots of places.
Yeah.
So she's got a stack of hundreds of tea towels. So she gave me about 4 or 5.
And they're all for places that you haven't been and she hasn't been.
One's from Yorkshire. One's from Yorkshire. So,
okay. Well, you've been there.
Yeah. Northumbria.
Northumbria, no.
Yeah.
It's very nice. I can vouch for it.
Northumbria?
Good.
Yes. I like the music, so yeah, I probably would.
Yes, good music. The other one, I don't know if anyone's done this one, and I don't have any with me, but I can send some pictures later because ours are mostly bits of furniture and stuff, but it's things that you fixed with duct tape or had to use the sort of fix-it-all mechanical spray, like a WD-40 or an RP7 to get it working. I had a tricycle when I was a kid that the axle wouldn't turn. We'd say it seized up, and that had a lot of RP7 spray applied to it. But I was famous for having duct tape on all my electronic devices in university.
I don't have it with me because it's in the car, but my brand new work camera, which is a Canon R5, the little cover that goes over the memory card slot snapped off, and it has to be on, otherwise the camera doesn't turn on. So I'm using sticky tape. Yeah, I got this cute little sticky tape dispenser that's like a little cat, and the sticky tape comes out its mouth, and that's what I'm using to tape it every time I do a shoot, because I've got to pull the memory card out. So I'm just like constantly. I'll super glue it. I'm sure I will, but right now I'm just taping it up because it's convenient.
Yeah.
There is
I don't
another
have a
form.
photo. I don't have a photo of this, but I remember when my ex-wife and I, when we were teenagers, she would constantly buy like canvas shoes, like Converses, and then she would always wear the soles of them out first. Like she somehow managed to wear through the like this bit of the foot,
Yeah.
and then she would just duct tape the whole way around the shoe, just be like a massive layer of duct. Do you remember those?
Going
Like,
to your house and
cool.
there'd just be like multiple pairs of these.
Yep. It was her go-to thing. She would just duct tape it closed,
Yeah.
duct tape over the hole, and then keep wearing them for another however many months.
Yeah, I remember the sole of little canvas sneakers that way too, because I used to use them for dancing when it was not on a surface that I could use my proper dance shoes for. And they would, wear out around the ball of the foot, or often the toe would peel off because I'd be kind of like hitting the toe or trying to point my foot with the rubber sole on it, which didn't really work.
I have a similar story. I went walking with my young family on Brownsea Island, which is on just off the coast of towards Poole in Portsmouth, Bournemouth way. And most don't like us to be walking together, but I was wearing flip-flops, the wrong shoes, and the flip-flops split. And so just as every woman does, in my handbag, I had a roll of duct tape. And so I taped the shoe to my foot and continued walking. So good old duct tape. Yeah.
Good solution. I've held many a dance shoe on my foot with duct tape because in Irish dancing, we put that on the bottom of the hard shoes, the tapping ones, to stop us from slipping because the tips are made of fiberglass and it is really very slippery, especially when they're new. So we'd put duct tape on there, but often you'd end up using it for something else. I had a strap that snapped, and so I just had duct tape around the whole arch of the foot. I don't remember the others how I used it, but it was an essential to have in your dance bag, duct tape. And we'd also use it to kind of, fix edges of flooring and things that we might otherwise trip on or whatever. So our remaining topics that weren't sort of show and tell ones were absolutely impossible battery removal, funny or harmless or wholesome kind of April Fool's stuff, jesters, a character called April, inconvenient water or power outages, how to successfully navigate a call center, Brodric the cat, because he hasn't met Brodric the cat yet, babies, the souvenir tea towels, which we've talked about, but two kind of subheadings, alternative uses and inaccuracies of the ones that have maps and things. Cone of shame, as in when your pet has to go to the vet and they have to wear the lampshade. The traveling teapot. Tegan requested that this come back. I think what Tegan actually wanted was the story of how it ended up where it was when it was last mentioned, but I've actually just ended up with another story of the teapot traveling even further. I have worked out the teapot's past story, but it's not in this story, so you have to remind me or request that to come in the future. And our variations on Three's a Crowd. So our variations on Three's a Crowd is the subject of today's little introductory poem, which is called Three. A crowd, a party, a problem, or a team. Three is a funny number of things. A tricycle's better than bog standard bikes, or a waste of a wheel on something that could be lighter. A trike is more stable, they say, but I'm not sure. It's not all that noticeable when it tries to corner. The third wheel has rarely been praised on a date, except when they turn out to be good at flying planes, a chef, or a first aider, for when you hit the ice at your wonderful winter romance skating. some dates are not for the uncoordinated. And then there are things we know for being in twos. Salt and vinegar rarely have a friend in their foods. But then salt and pepper do also belong. So why is it salt, pepper, and vinegar aren't on? Three's a good base for giant pyramid monuments, or the right amount of lines in a feedback sandwich comment, or the divisions on your page to make satisfying landscapes, if you're an artist who likes to use theory in your painting. But it doesn't work so well for earrings or lungs. Then again, why do we have two and not just one? Perhaps more is better. 2 hearts on an alien certainly seems to prevent their health waning. So why not have 3? Like the leaves on a clover, the layers of 3-ply, the trilogies of fantasy authors. It might be a crowd, but it could be a winning team. Who knows? Guess it probably depends on the 3.
Very nice.
Very good.
Yeah.
Like the Doctor Who reference.
Thank you. So today's story is called April Fools, and that kind of has a double meaning, which you'll get the idea of when we get to the end. Elena! Fraser beamed into the video call, slightly too close to his camera, in the distinctive manner of someone who thinks technology is awesome, but isn't actually that technologically literate. We're adopting a baby! Elena wondered whether she'd heard correctly. No, she replied when she'd determined that she probably had. That's a terrible idea. James will start calling them sir and trying to be their butler at a few months old. You won't know how to do anything, and you'll end up calling me. And I'm not coming over there to help you. I'm not a baby person, and don't even think about asking Betty because she's far too old to fly to Scotland again. Your baby will end up being the White Cedar Flat family's baby, and Albie and Alice already have Dina, and the rest of us don't want a kid, do we? She looked behind her, to where Jen and Cassie were working together to clip the claws of an unimpressed Crackers the Galah. What? Asked Jen, as Crackers screeched, "Take out the rubbish!" in her ear, preventing her from hearing. Fraser and James say they're going to adopt a baby, Elena reiterated. Oh, cute, Jen exclaimed. Not the backup Elena was hoping for. Jen, can you actually imagine Fraser with a baby? Jen shrugged. I couldn't imagine Albie with a baby, but he did it. I've learnt to reserve judgment until I actually see what happens. Everyone turned to watch Albie and visiting family friend April entertaining Dina in the next room, the child cackling and racing between them. Behind Fraser, Brodric the cat was perched on his velvet cushion, his long grey striped fur spilling across the fabric in silken waves. He was wearing his Stuart tartan coat, his red support animal vest, and his very best ominous glare. Brodric knew what the word baby meant. He had encountered such tiny humans on some of the adventures Fraser insisted on taking them on to get pictures for the Scots Paws Instagram. Young humans were noisy, smelly, and attention-grabbing for the other humans who were supposed to be attending to their cat. It was bad enough that James was suddenly an equal partner in the estate and no longer a serving human who brought Brodric smoked salmon on a little tray. It was also bad enough that Fraser's attention was largely taken up by James and also not on Brodric. But now these dreadful humans wanted to bring home a tiny human, sacrificing more of their attention, the peace of the house, and probably quite a few of Brodric's favourite places to sit if his predictions about the small human were accurate. So Brodric glared and he schemed. He would need hiding places, a schedule for obtaining smoked fish when the small human was asleep, and a few means of reminding Fraser and James that it was in fact he, Brodric, who was the rightful owner of this place, and ought to be considering an heir. Some paperwork had been done with James's name on it. But as far as Brodric was concerned, the pesky human's ink on paper made no difference to who this estate really belonged to. He'd show them. April grinned to herself as she carefully secreted Albie's teapot among the layers of clothing packed in her light suitcase. April's mother said that hiding the teapot in surprising places as a joke went back in their family's history as far as April's great-grandmother. When it happened to be the month of April and close enough to April Fools, the family's efforts redoubled. April was named for the fun of the game into which she'd been born. April had taken to the joke by the time she was 8 years old, and all her closest friends had, at one time or another, discovered their teapot in the refrigerator or the postbox out the front or in the shoe rack. Unfortunately, one of April's teapot hidings for Albie had recently resulted in the pot falling out of the fuse box when it took Albie by surprise, and the spout of the pot had broken. Albie had sacrilegiously mended the teapot with many layers of duct tape. April knew, however, that it was a family heirloom, and she felt bad that her fun joke had led to it being mummified in grey, sticky, plasticky mess. Luckily, April's work as a journalist took her travelling far and wide, and she'd arranged to have the teapot repaired through the beautiful art of kintsugi on her next overseas trip. All she had to do was secretly whisk the teapot away in her suitcase, and she'd be able to bring it home, mended with gold. She just had to make sure she didn't get her travelling suitcase mixed up with her clowning equipment, or jester kit, as she preferred to call it. April's side hustle and great joy was getting into a jester's outfit and making people laugh. Fake flowers that squirted water weren't exactly useful for travelling to be the sports news anchor at an international event, however. April wrapped Albie's teapot in her red blazer and marked the outside of the journalism suitcase with a simple navy bow of ribbon on the zip. On the similar suitcase containing her jester's kit, she put some jangly little bells that would be sure to alert her if she was bringing the wrong bag on the plane. Brodric paced, jaguar-like, along the top of a large mahogany dresser in the study. Fraser, he knew, did not like to spend time in the study, because that was where all the ink and paper things were that made him get anxious human smell and look confused. Brodric hypothesized that Fraser would, therefore, not bring the tiny human into the study. Up here, Brodric would also hopefully be out of reach of little grabby fingers that might pull his tail or get banana puree in his fur. He just needed to persuade one of the humans that they ought to place one of his cushions up here, Brodric mused, that it would make an excellent vantage point from which to ensure, "Ow!" He leapt into the air, shaking his right front paw in a wild and unsuccessful attempt to free it from what felt like the sudden grip of a large crab. Brodric had never been much of a mouser. In fact, Brodric had never worked a day in his life, hence the need for mousetraps in the big old house, with its many small crevices and hollows, perfect for capturing crumbs and letting in small mammals. Generally successful efforts had been made to place the mousetraps where Brodric would not catch his paws in them. However, it was not a normal state of affairs for Brodric to do such a thing as jump onto a high surface. Getting up high involved effort, and Brodric did not enjoy effort. He enjoyed sunbeams and smoked salmon. The motivation of impending disruption by a tiny human, however, meant a little effort now might save a lot later. Except when one's toe beans were being squished by a nasty metal contraption. Brodric yowled piteously until James appeared to rescue him. Good practice, Brodric thought, with a slight sneer, in spite of the painful sting in his toes. James fetched a stepladder and helped Brodric down from the dresser. Brodric looked forward to being freed and placed back on his velvet cushion. But no. James looked at his paw after removing the mousetrap, frowned a bit, and said the word vet. This was another word Brodric knew, and he was most certainly not going. The vet had dogs, mogs, and screeching birds. It had people who wanted to prick him with small, sharp implements and poke thermometers in places they had no right, and it smelt like nasty cleaning stuff and rubber gloves. Brodric made a hasty bid for escape. Unfortunately for Brodric, he did not spend a lot of time practicing sprints, and he had injured toes. The vet shaved a patch on top of Brodric's paw. They put wet, cold, stingy stuff on his toes, poked his foot with sharp things, and then wrapped it up in fabric like humans did their bodies. And as if that wasn't humiliating enough, then they put a thing around his neck. It was heavy and made it hard to see in his peripheral vision. It made him look like a small, hairy torch. Brodric tried going backwards to duck out of it. He tried going through small spaces to knock it off. He lost a bit of salmon down it at dinner. It was the ultimate mortifying horror, and he forbade Fraser to take any pictures for Instagram with a sharp hiss and the threat of claws. Eventually, he settled back on his velvet cushion, his chin resting on uncomfortable plastic, and sulked. April straightened her blazer and headed across the lawns towards the castle, in front of which she would be filming her introductory and concluding remarks each day of the golf tournament. The film and sound crew were already waiting. A few photographers were busy capturing the architecture. Off to one side stood two men with a baby. April recognised Fraser Stewart from previous sporting events and the big grey cat that seemed to go with him everywhere, which was currently wearing a cone of shame and being shielded from photos. April thought she was vaguely familiar with the second man too, as though perhaps he'd been in the background of photos or helped her with something at a past event. To avoid awkwardness, if she appeared to remember the second man but didn't know his name, April approached both of them with a hand outstretched. "Hello, April May, reporter with the Australian crew." "Fraser," said Fraser, shaking her hand. "And Brodric?" April went to turn to the second man and say hello. "No, sorry, he always does that. I'm James. Brodric is the cat." "Oh, I see," answered April. She leaned down to pat the cat, but thought better of it. The cat really seemed to be glaring. "And the baby?" "Summer," replied James. "Optimistic, isn't it?" At that moment, baby Summer began to grizzle and squirm in Fraser's arms. Fraser got an initial look of alarm that told April the baby hadn't been with them very long, and then started to do exaggerated expressions at her that Summer seemed to find entertaining. "Good faces," April remarked. "You'd make a good jester." "Is there something you know about?" Fraser asked, as he continued to poke out his tongue and wiggle his eyebrows and wrinkle his nose. "Yes," said April. "It's my little side business." She reached into her bag for her lapel microphone and came out with a mug with a Jack-in-the-Box flower in it instead. She showed the pop-out flower to baby Summer, who stopped crying and made a noise like, "Cup?" "Cup, yeah," said April, as though Summer was recognizing the object. "It's not a very good cup, though, look." She pretended to sip from the cup, then popped up the flower at exactly the right moment so it appeared to gently strike her on the nose. "Cup," Summer responded with a smile that could have meant she liked the performance, or could have meant she was making a smelly present for her dads. "After you've done your report, do you want to come up to the house for some tea? James asked April hopefully. I think we could use a jester. Brodric glared at April. 3 humans was always a crowd. When that other human called Elena was here, she always slept in the bed Brodric liked and took all of Fraser's attention that wasn't already taken by James, which was now the role of the tiny human, just as he'd known it would be. A 3rd adult human was not good news. Sure, April told James. Babies sort of need a jesting team, don't they? James nodded. After the sports news was recorded, April went into the main house with Fraser, James, and baby Summer, and the grumpy-looking cat. She was sure the cat hadn't looked quite so cross last time she'd seen him. Perhaps the baby was keeping him awake. Oh, she remarked, picking up a tea towel with a map of Ireland on it. I collect these. She spread it out next to her teacup. I've always wondered how far off the maps are. Baby Summer coughed and spat up on James's shoulder. Yeah. Fraser grabbed the souvenir tea towel and used it to mop James's cable knit. Well, he said, as though this hadn't just happened, we could test it. He went to a drawer and came back with a tea towel featuring Scotland. If they're at all accurate, we should be able to drive to any of these villages. He waved a finger over an area. In the time between your broadcasts. As it turned out, they didn't get much choice about trying if they didn't want to rely on anyone's memory. On the 2nd day of the golf tournament, the power went out on the estate. Everybody's phone batteries lasted a little while, and they all kept using them, thinking the power would surely come back on before long. But it didn't. And a short wander up the road revealed that it was just the estate, not the whole area. Fraser rang the energy provider, but it was a call centre, and after he selected a few numbered options, it just put him on hold for an hour and a half, waiting for a human customer service rep to get to him. James had a go with similar luck, and April patiently went through extra numbered options, only to be told, when she did get through, that a team was working on it and they hoped they could fix it by morning. By morning, the power was not back on and everyone's phones were dead. Fraser produced some small battery-powered lanterns for everyone, but they all needed their batteries replaced and no one seemed to be able to open the battery compartments without breaking them. Most of the lanterns soon ended up with duct tape sealing the batteries in. Of course, the other thing that drained phones meant was that no one could use Google Maps to check the accuracy of the tea towel. The group's road trip took them nowhere near the village they'd intended to go to, but at least the fishing village they found themselves in had plenty to offer Brodric. April got a temporary scare when she opened her suitcase each night because Albie had put her clown shoes in it as a gentle April Fool's prank to briefly make her think she'd brought the wrong bag after all. Now she knew why he'd checked so many times that she was definitely taking the right stuff. After the day of driving and too much fish, Brodric found he didn't have the energy to seek out a hiding place. He settled on his velvet cushion next to Summer's baby basket and hoped the tiny human wouldn't pay him any attention. He was just getting settled when Summer opened one eye. "Ka!" she declared, waving pudgy baby fingers in his direction. "Ka!" Brodric watched her warily. Surely "ka" wasn't supposed to mean cat. "Ka!" Summer repeated, reaching for him again. The small human couldn't move on her own, Brodric reminded himself. He cautiously got up and moved a little closer, just within reach of the outstretched fingers. They were clumsy fingers, that poked his nose and bumped his whiskers, but they were gentle when they encountered the unexpected texture of fur, one that perhaps they hadn't felt before. Knowingly or not, summer began to provide a quite pleasant scratch behind the ears. It was much more attention than the adult humans were giving him, Brodric reflected. Perhaps the little human wasn't so bad. When April left the next day, Brodric reluctantly confessed to himself that the third adult human hadn't been so bad either. 3 was a crowd, even in the big stone kitchen, but it was a crowd that meant somebody was free to make Brodric bacon, even when 2 out of 3 adults were hopping around trying to entertain a baby. 3 was a semblance of space, too. After April returned to Australia, Fraser and James called the White Cedar Flat crowd again one morning. It had been established at some point over the last week that April's friend Albie was the same person as Fraser's friend Elena's friend Albie. Fraser set up the Zoom with the settings April had requested and waited to see if Albie was in Elena's background again. Sure enough, Elena appeared, with the usual group of many more than 3 poking their heads into the shot around her. Brodric made a low rumble at the galah on screen, and Crackers screeched, "Oh, shit!" and flew away across Elena's apartment. Once everyone was done saying hello, Fraser started to tell Elena about meeting April, waiting for the thing they'd hidden in their background to be noticed. "Wait a minute," Elena said, peering closer at the screen. "Is that Albie's teapot? Everyone's been looking for it." Albie leaned in closer to the screen. "That is my teapot. Why is my teapot at Fraser and James's house in Scotland?" "April Fools," James chuckled, trying not to give anything else away. Right on cue, Elena's doorbell rang. She got up to answer it. "But how?" Albie was exclaiming. "Hold on, has someone done kintsugi on my teapot?" April entered behind Elena and snuck up to tap Albie on the shoulder, her free hand behind her back. Albie whirled around in the wheelie chair. "April Fools," April grinned, producing a box from behind her. "Fraser and James's background is just a photograph. Your real teapot is right here." She held out the box, containing the pot mended with kintsugi. Albie drew it out in wonder and beamed at her. "It's even more special than before," he said. "Thank you, April." James, who had got up to get some tea on the other end of the call, came back into the room looking flustered. Only cups on his familiar tray. "April," he demanded, though James wasn't very good at demanding, so it came out more like a polite greeting. "Where is our teapot?" April grinned. "That one," she told him, "is for you 2 jesters to solve." Fraser and James glared. Summer said, "Ka!" and reached towards Brodric. And Brodric purred. He liked this third adult human. These 3 didn't make a crowd. They made bacon and a gentler tiny human and pranks. Brodric had decided that he liked pranks. At least when the humans only played them on one another. So Brodric purred and he schemed. This human called April. April who fooled the other humans. She would be visiting again.
No.
Yay!
I love it. I liked these 3 made bacon. 3 makes bacon.
And they
That's Chompy being good, thinking that he's going to get my nachos, but he's not.
Okay, well, do we have some thoughts on what we'd like in the next story?
And so it's April, May,
Nachos.
story.
Nachos.
Nachos.
Runaway timetables in,
Funny.
Sarah.
I don't know where we get
Okay.
this inspiration from, but something is to saying nachos.
Okay.
Yeah.
No reason why we can't have nachos. Nachos,
Railway
funny.
timetables.
Bunnies.
I'd like some kind of astronomy.
Oh, okay.
We saw a really cool constellation map today.
Oh, really?
Because we ended up in a library, and it was
Mhm.
like this really cool, really pretty library. And one of the things it had on the shelf, like on display, was a Chinese constellation map because they're all
Wow.
different.
Yes, of course.
Yeah,
Oh, that would be great. Oh my goodness.
I have a picture I will send to Sarah.
Yeah, I would love to see, because yes, I'm always fascinated by that idea of I've got a little tattoo. Probably won't be able to see very well because it's just dots. Oh no, you can
yeah.
see it on the camera.
Yeah, you can see it.
That's a constellation that's not officially recognized anymore.
Oh,
Because there was this constellation that was made into a thing in the Roman era, because one of the Caesars, his boyfriend died tragically, and he was so distraught that he told everyone that they had to recognize this new constellation in the sky because this is my boyfriend who's now this is dead angel. And so for several hundred years, everyone was like, oh, yeah, got to remember that's the Caesar's dead boyfriend. Yeah, very important.
Oh, wow.
And then eventually it just got annulled when I can't remember what the name of the organization is, but it's like an international organization that decides, at least for like Western countries, what the official constellations are. And they went, what's this weird falling guy? It doesn't even look like a falling guy. No, we're not going to have that anymore.
Oh, because
And
the others are
split
so
it up.
accurate.
right.
Split it up into two other ones. So now it's part of Aquila and something or other else. So it
That
doesn't
could be a fun theme, like
exist anymore.
things that got unrecognized, or like
Yeah.
That'd be a fun
That's
theme.
That's a good one. That's a good
Like
Yeah,
Pluto.
things that were official and then got
unofficial.
revoked.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'd like something on railway timetables.
Okay.
Of course you would.
No, but I mean, it's more complicated than that. It's like being on a railway station, trying to find the right platform for the right train going to the right place. Like Manchester Piccadilly, for instance.
Yes.
Which floor do I need to be on to catch this train? And which train?
Yes. I do
Like,
not
when
like
we went to
stations that have multiple floors as well as platforms.
Oh yeah.
We stayed on the same floor the first time we came.
Thing?
That's a
And we
thing
ended up
at,
on a train that went really slowly and everywhere.
where is that? Is that at Manchester Piccadilly that it
Yeah,
has
it
the
is. And
multiple
when we
levels?
went back,
And you come
we
in
went
and then
on
you're
a
like,
bus train.
you have to go in the lift. And if the
Yes.
lift is too slow, then like sometimes you miss your connection because you can't get up to the upstairs one quick enough.
No, that's too stressful.
I don't know.
On principle,
I do not
we try and
understand the physics of how they're putting some trains up higher. That's
move that about.
Yeah, but the thing is that on both levels, trains go to Sheffield. So if you're standing on the platform and you look at the sign, it says Sheffield. So you're going to platform
but
9.
you might be on the one that's going to stop absolutely everywhere. Like
That's the one we got on.
That's the one we got on, and it went a different way. So like Sheffield was an hour and a
go a
half.
different way. Yeah.
Because on the other train, Sheffield's 45 minutes. Because it just goes through Stockport.
Yes.
I was going to say, I don't know if this is useful to you, Sarah, but it might be inspiring. Someone the other day was telling me her worst public transport story. She'd accidentally got on the wrong bus one time and had fallen asleep on the wrong bus.
Oh no.
And so she woke up miles away from where she was meant to be. And she got off the bus and was trying to figure out where she was and how to catch another bus. And it started thunderstorming and pouring with rain. So while she was trying to get to somewhere, to get to another bus. She got absolutely drenched. And then when she finally got to the place to catch the proper bus, the bus driver wouldn't let her on because she was too wet.
Oh,
Which I said,
That's so
like, she
mean.
should have reported this bus driver because that's really not okay.
No.
And then apparently she tried to get an Uber, and the Uber wouldn't let her in because she was too wet. She must have been
Wow.
looking really
she's very
miserable
wet.
or something.
What then happened to her? Is
She
she
ended up just
still
having to
wet?
walk the whole way home.
How far?
I don't know, like, I think she said it was at least an hour home. It was like a really long way, which is why she was trying to get any other form of transport.
Oh.
And they wouldn't let her.
unbelievable.
When is it a rule that you can't be wet on a bus?
I don't know. I've never heard that
it's
before.
not on the rules.
No,
I think
on the
it's-
wall. It doesn't say don't
They
be
would-
wet.
no,
No,
it
don't.
doesn't. Exactly. So I don't know what their problem was, but
Yeah.
I've never heard that before.
Going back to trains for a minute, one of the things I always hate when I get on at Waterloo is that not all the trains stop at all the stations, yes, but on the train it will say you have to be in coaches such and such to such and such if you want to get to such and such station.
They split the train at some point.
And they split the trains, and then you're sitting there wondering whether you're on, because some of them now have the signs on them, but not every train is modern enough to have that. So you're sitting panicking as to whether you're in the right one.
Yeah.
So I don't enjoy that. And I don't enjoy the ones with the they say about mind the gap. And yeah, some of the gaps are huge.
They
are.
You really
They
need to
are.
mind the gap. Yeah.
With a request.
That would be underneath.
Perhaps you
Like
could
where
have.
my parents live is so like out of the way that there is still this place on the train line that is a request stop. So if you want the train to
Oh, really?
You have to actually.
the
Like,
guard when you get on.
Oh,
Wow.
I feel like there's quite a
Oh my
restriction, like
goodness.
weird train law.
Weird
Yeah.
train law. Yeah.
That's great. Wow.
Australians should not have a lighting. They should have get off. When you get off the train, bloody gap.
Yeah.
just be careful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome
Yeah.
to Australia.
See-
Like in Barry's voice. Barry's voice just comes over the loudspeaker going, "Get off the train."
Yeah.
And
Carefully.
this is almost the
Carefully,
opposite of things getting demoted. Things getting kind of kept and preserved. Do you know there's this one station in the London Underground that still has this human mind the gap voice, and there's this like really sweet story about like the guy who recorded it, and then like years later he was dead and his wife heard the recording and she was like, that's my husband's voice. So then they just kept it and never like replaced it with a robot.
Oh, wow.
I'll put a link in the chat because I'm not explaining it.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
Aww.
Definitely not professional at video calls.
No, not at all.
He is. He's a professional photo bomber.
He's trying
He's a bomber.
to get to my nachos, but he doesn't understand that
this is
they're
not
not
love.
nachos.
Oh my
Love
God.
He's being Dr. Chompy again.
Dr. Chompy Chompins.
Dr.
No.
Chomp.
Oh my
Give you an injection. That. There you go. I'll just fix your hair.
Oh,
Make your head feel
Very
better.
good he's doing.
Yep.
Sarah, do you have too many prompts now, or can I add in the last one?
Oh, there's room for that. We've got 1, 2, 3, essentially 5 at the moment, which isn't that many because some of them are all like they're a heading,
kind
of
a few
fine.
things under. Like we've got the railway thing, and then a few things under that, the astronomy thing, and then a sort of stuff under that.
Okay. Well,
What?
it could go in with it made me think of it when you were talking about the train stuff and bunnies on the train. But it doesn't necessarily have to be the train thing, but trying to transport really awkward shaped objects.
Yeah.
It's something I feel like I do all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't know how other people, I don't know if it's just because I don't have a car, so other people would transport weird things in their car.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm constantly struggling on public transport, on bikes, on foot to carry awkwardly shaped objects. Like yesterday I had to bring home a cardboard box with 6 pots of plants, of seedlings in them. And so I had to bring it home on the tram and on the train, and it was fine. But I've got so many weird looks because I was trying to bring,
why are you
trying not to tip it, and
yeah,
you know, and I tucked like all my clothes in around them so that they wouldn't move around. And
you get tricks like you just stuff, your jumper that you've taken off in there, and that won't fall over, and done.
And the other day I saw a kid on a bike who had a bag which I think was like he'd got takeaway or something, because it had inside, you could see the like polystyrene container shape of like a takeaway container, and so he didn't want to tip it, but he was on his bike, so he was holding the top of the bag in his teeth as he was riding like this. And I was like, oh yeah, I've been there, buddy.
Yeah.
I do that like when I go to the shop, our nearest shop, the Little, is one of the only shops around that just has manned checkouts, actual people serving at all of the checkouts. And it's nice, and you sort of get to know the people who are there all the time because they're particular staff. And they're efficient and stuff, it's fine. But because they are quite efficient and there's not a lot of room at the end of the checkout, if you can't pick up all your things or put them into the bags as they're scanning them quick enough, you have to somehow pick it all up. Which can, like, if you've used a basket to get it to the checkout, then you're like, oh, because you have to leave the basket at the other end. So I always have like carry bags in my backpack, but I can't get them all out while I'm trying to pay, and I'm trying to, it's also like an app for the shop, so I'm trying to scan the app and then get my card and then put my card back and then put that away safely, so my phone and my card are safe. And then I'm like, oh, the next person's waiting, and the person on the checkout will wait to start scanning their things until you take
that's it. And everyone's just watching you.
So everyone is waiting for you to take all your stuff away. And they do like a little shelf, windowsill, like packing shelf where you can take stuff to pack it in your bags, which is great. But getting to there, I am often doing it by using your head. Got the stuff in your hand, and then you like holding it with your chin, and then just go over there like this, and then like spread it all out and redo it. So I always find if I do put it in the bags, then I end up having to redo the packing because they don't scan everything in the right order for how I pack it or whatever. So then just they're taking it all out again. Do you want to do that either?
And then you get those automated ones, which I quite often do them on my own. In fact, our local shopping centre now only keeps the automated ones open when it's very, very quiet, so they don't have cashiers working. They get them to do something else, and so you're forced to go on those automated ones. And I always take the little granny trolley along, and I don't, I put that stuff in the shopping trolley.
You take it.
I put it into my trolley. But if you've got to do it yourself, you end up with this, great pile of stuff, and then you've got to get it into your own trolley. And you've paid and everything. The thing's going, please take your items.
Take your items.
Oh,
please take your items.
You know what really annoys me? That it doesn't stop saying that as soon as you take the weight off the scales, because if you take anything off the scales while you're scanning because you run out of space, it's going to go item removed from bagging area. So it shows that you've started to take your stuff. So why does it keep rushing you?
That's right.
Yeah. I find myself just talking back to it, saying,
"Same." That's what I was going to
shut up.
I do that all the time.
I'm doing
I'm
it.
always like, muttering under my breath, being like, "Yes, I'm taking my items. Yes, okay, I will take my items. Just stop. I'm
We have
doing it right now."
Talking back to
We have that in
the
story time,
Yeah.
talking back to
like the
to
automated.
inanimate objects.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So what's our next story date, Sarah?
So I think it was May 11th. Let me just check.
May Day.
So 11th of May is the next one.
Okay.
Will be the same time as this because all the daylight savings is done. So once again, 10 o'clock for UK. 6:30 p.m. was it for Adelaide?
Yes.
And still 5 o'clock in China. So
The Crows won't be
Chompy.
playing cards that day,
It
Sarah.
has gone floppy.
Chompy has now fallen asleep.
Yeah.
Very
Bye, Chompy.
floppy.
he had a bedtime story.
He did.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Hannah.
Yeah, great to meet you, Hannah.
Thank you, Sarah. Take care.
Meet you, Hannah.
Bye.